to labeling, sampling, analysis, and that was the amount that should be provided for lab testing. And candidly, I asked Spectrum Labs very early on, generically, what's typically the amount that you need to do your profiles and testing and things like that, and I was told 2 grams.
I think that that's changed now that they have the capacity for more types of tests. They're doing multiple different types of assays. Most of them take about half a gram. So we might need to bring that up beyond 2 grams.
Maybe an amount sufficient for the specific tests required to be inserted, rather than a specific
or the
amount,
specific
because that
tests
allows for
ordered.
future changes. But it has to be specified that it is an amount sufficient for testing, but not an excess, or whatever length.
I presume at some point there will be rules more specific determining how they dispose of extra things like this. I think that there's something drafted in here. But yeah, there are specific amounts that are required for each different type of test, whether it be a potency test, mold and fungus, any of the DNA testing, any of these different things that any lab is going to be able to do. So 2 grams may or may not be sufficient, depending on what's ordered by the center or the NIP.
Okay. Would you mind, Betty, establishing some dialogue with the lab? Conversely, I intend to go to the crime lab to see what their needs are. They're going to have a whole different set of protocols to look at. Jessica?
My question about this is, this doesn't address the degradation of THC after it's been tested as it sits on the shelf and stores for the period of a course of time. And so people could have a test done and then be storing that marijuana for 6 weeks to 6 months before it actually hits the shelf to the end user because of the size of some of these grows and the size of some crops that they may come, they're probably going to shift their crop in a huge grow each time and then just try to save some stuff out. Some places are at least. And so that hasn't been addressed of, the time frame that test shall be good for.
Yeah. And again, we'll get to that at maybe some point down the road, but right now it's herbicides, pesticides, the harmful contaminants that we're working on. And the purpose of the testing is for those purposes, looking at the molds and the other stuff. It's not necessarily for strength or strains, the THC quantities. Like I said, we may ultimately get there, but right now, as we get off the ground until we get uniform labs and all the other kinds of things, it's the true public health safety kinds of concerns.
I'm sorry, but just the use of the word may. Is it statutory? After the first number 6, a license, agency may provide?
I believe that is actually the language out of the statute.
It is not required.
I'm just wondering if laboratory is defined anywhere, because we only have a couple operating, and is there ever going to be a point in time where there's authorized labs, or?
Yeah, we'll actually license through our occupational licenses that category, and at that point we'll have to create something through our occupational licenses.
Okay.
And there is no definition of lab in 1284. That's a good point. And here's a question that I would love to hear the group's thoughts on, but this has come up in many, many criminal cases. There is no legal way for a private, non-governmental citizen to destroy medical marijuana. It can't be done legally. You can't burn it, because that's open burning, which is illegal in Colorado. You can't flush it down the toilet. You can't use the sewer system to dispose of agricultural waste. You can't throw it away in your dumpster, in your garbage, because other non-patients may access it. You can't put it in the dump. You really can't bury it for the same reason. There is no legal way for a private citizen to destroy medical marijuana. The only legal way to dispose of it is to give it or sell it to a patient. That's the only way. So what we're saying, it must be destroyed. You can't legally destroy it.
Well, and this
I
is
think under certain circumstances it becomes contraband, and if it's contraband, we can destroy it.
Yeah, government, I'm saying. Government can destroy it because the rules don't apply to them. But private citizens cannot destroy medical marijuana. It can't be done legally. And so this regulation that requires it to be destroyed, I think you're inviting a violation of the law by private citizens.
but this is only for licensed marijuana.
which is a private citizen.
No, it's a licensee.
And but it's not a governmental entity, and so they would be running afoul of the criminal law.
But I think, Rob, I think you're misreading it. We're not telling the center to destroy it. We're saying the center has to provide it for us for lab analysis, and when it's done, it's destroyed.
It
The
says,
process
this
of
is the
analysis
small
is
amount for
destroyed.
testing to a laboratory. This is not testing to the government.
I have labs, and we're the ones that are gonna be out doing the testing.
So there's no private labs. This is not intended to apply to private labs?
I can't say it is at this point, no. I mean, ultimately, on down the road, if we get to the strain-specific THC levels and things like that, this is for herbicides, pesticides. If my guys, the compliance guys are out, and they seize a sample, we're gonna send it to a lab for analysis to find out if it's got those harmful contaminants that we're gonna identify. Herbicides, pesticides, maybe it's got something that we say you can't use, we find it in there. I need to know the amount that we can get or the amount that is needed to do that test.
So why do we care from Full Spectrum how much they need if this isn't about
I
private
just was
labs?
asking what their standard is.
Because my understanding of 1284 is the intent was to empower these private labs to receive and test medical marijuana. But now I'm hearing the opposite, that it's your belief that these private labs have no role at this point?
No, I'm not saying that at all. Private labs that are licensed, not private citizens, but licensed people will be regulated under this purview. And absolutely, we did create a mechanism for industry labs to do testing.
Okay, so
And-
this
and-
covers both the private and government labs. So how then does the private lab destroy it legally?
We're creating a mechanism for them to do it.
Through regulation though? I don't think we can repeal the criminal laws in Title 18 of the Colorado Revised Statutes through this regulation. I don't think that can happen.
I think I have statutory authority to do it. Yeah.
Well, maybe Betty can clarify, doesn't the process of using this sample to test it destroy it inherently?
Not all of it.
Okay.
It actually creates more mass of waste than the actual sample itself.
I'll tell you the way I see this playing out. I mean, ultimately, if there are labs, full spectrum, not to pick on anyone, but since we've discussed them, but ultimately, if they're in that process and we create a licensing scheme to allow them to do specific kinds of tests, with that protocol, as is listed in here, will be chain of custody kinds of things, and they're gonna have to establish a protocol for destruction of it, once the test is done.
Which is going to be a significant challenge that I could go into great detail about, that leads to enormous amounts of fluid being walked out of your lab.
Right.
But certainly something can be developed under the same scheme or a similar scheme as what's going to happen in Groves with waste product there, I would think.
Maybe you can go to the indigent care.
Well, not when it's extracted into.
No, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
the stuff that's left over. Maybe,
Well, that's
maybe
what
you can come up with something thinking out of the box.
I would certainly hope so.
I'm just thinking.
I'm just, yeah, if you would ask, I'm just curious what their norm is.
And how much
I
is
am
left over.
absolutely gonna go to CDI and ask the same question to them. I mean, I don't know what kind of tests we run, or if, you need this much to do this test, or this much to do that
Well,
test.
it also depends on what product you're testing. So an extract is going to be a very small amount, hopefully they're doing residual.
That's what I'm looking for, if you
Yeah.
could give me something to work with.
Absolutely.
Maybe, then it doesn't seem that there's anything specifically in the statute that says it has to be destroyed. Could it not revert back to the MMC that sent it in for testing? Trail chain of custody, so that it's clear this much was provided, this much was tested, this much was back.
I'll tell you the peril to doing that. If it goes back to the center, it's gonna ultimately end up with a patient. And if it's tainted, you're gonna have this going on. So I would prefer that we establish a chain of custody, it's tested and distributed.
But it's just been tested, so we know whether it's been tainted or not.
I'm sorry?
It's just been tested, so we know whether it is tainted, and why don't we say,
If it's not tainted,
if it's
return
not
it.
tainted, it will be returned to the center, or maybe better yet, create some mechanism for indigent patients to